This is the Horse Radio Network.
This is episode 131 of the Dressage Radio Show, brought to you with the generous support of Equestrian Collections. Hello, I'm Chris Stafford, coming to you from Lexington, Kentucky, where we're celebrating Thanksgiving, of course, here in the U.S. This week, and I hope you're enjoying all those family celebrations. That is, of course, once you've taken care of the horses, and also having time to just listen to the show this week. And many of you will know that from time to time we run this series called Great Partnerships, and we had some requests that came in via our Facebook fan page and directly via email to me here. So this week we're going to reflect on a wonderful partnership that Finland's Kyrklund had with Matador. So I'm going to bring you that interview in just a second. But first of all, I want to remind you of our sponsor here on the Dressage Radio Show, and that is Equestrian Collections, because riding in a cold climate can be tough enough if you're not wearing the right clothing. So this is where Equestrian Collections can help you with its extensive range of winter riding breeches from well-known brands such as Keritz, Rumpf, Tough Rider, Iridian, Equus, Ovation and Aria, to name just a few. There is something for all occasions and conditions to ensure you're protected against the elements. You can find out more about these popular breeches and the full range of Equestrian Collections winter wear by following the link on our show notes or going directly to equestriancollections.com. And if you use coupon code HRN at the checkout, you'll get $10 off your next order of $100 or more. Equestrian Collections is a participating retailer of the Horse World Gives Back campaign. Well, as I said, we're going to be celebrating now one of those great partnerships in the sport, and this time it is Kyrklund and Matador. Well, Kyra, welcome to the Dressage Radio Show. Thank you for joining us and being part of our great partnership series.
Thank you.
It's great to have you on the show. I've been meaning to have you on the show for a number of months now, but this is a good excuse for you to come on the show and talk to us about one of your, I think, favourite partners, and that, of course, was Matador.
Yeah.
Fond memories.
Yeah, no, he was a great horse, and he was really the one that made my name internationally, so he has a special place in my heart.
I'm sure he does. Let's talk a little bit about his very early days, Kyra, and how you found him as a very young horse, didn't you?
Well, I was traveling in Denmark looking at horses together with a dealer, and then we came to this training stable, and it was a guy that I knew from Strömsholm when I was doing my teacher's courses there, and so he had got in this young stallion. He was 2.5 years old, so he wasn't ridden, and he just said he was a very nice horse, and then they let him loose in the indoor school, and I fell in love with him immediately. But then he was pretty expensive, so both me and the dealer thought that it was 80,000 Danish crowns at the time, which is like maybe 8,000 pounds, whatever that is, dollars. And it was a lot of money for a 2.5-year-old that you couldn't really try.
And at that time, of course, we're talking about 1979, wasn't it, when he foaled?
Yeah.
So, he was just in the... How old was he? Was he 2 when you first saw him? Just a young...
Well, he was 2.5 at the time, so it was like at the end of the summer when he then, like by New Year, would turn 3. And I just remember, he was just a horse that I thought of still. And when I left there, it was like with the bad feeling of, or I had a feeling that this was really a good horse, but I had no way of buying him. And then I went back to Finland, and then like 1 or 2 days later, one of my customers who had a couple of young horses with me, he phoned me and said, "Oh, do you know a 2 or 3 year old stallion that I would be interested in buying one?" And letting like the horse stay in my stable and be ridden. And I said, yes, I think I know the the horse. And his name was Heikki Soras. And so, I said, contact these people, and he did, and he went over to see it, and he bought it like from that spot.
Now, you said you fell in love with him when you saw him running free and loose in the school. What was it that was so appealing about him as a young horse?
Well, first of all, he always had some sort of mesmerizing eye. He could look at. He really looked at people. He just didn't look out. He looked at them, and he could like capture your. Or he could capture people, and it wasn't only horse people. It was also people that didn't have anything to do with horses that would stop by his box and look at him, because he was a bit like, look at me. And at the same time, he was a little bit like a puppy. He was young at that moment, but then also later on, he always had that sort of babyish look, or bear or something like that. And then he was very athletic. He when he was standing still and when he started moving, he was like immediately up and moving, and you could see he had a very good balance. He could change gear and change direction and was always in the right canter, and so he just looked special, I think.
So he was, as you said, very striking to look at, with that very unique white blaze that he had, a very catching personality. What was his character like when he was young? Was he easy to train, or he was a bit spooky, wasn't he? He was very sensitive as well.
Well, he was very sensitive, but he was never really spooky. He was always sensitive for sounds, but never really like looking at anything. And he was a bit scared, like, he was boisterous because he was a stallion, but he never did it to get you off or to go after other horses. He was just had too much energy and didn't really know what to do with the energy, and then he could run away or something, and then he got scared at the same time. So you had to be very careful not being strong with him or anything like that. He then, because what happened then after, this guy bought it, and then he left him in Denmark, so he was shown as a 3-year-old and was licensed there. So he was covering one season, but didn't have that many. I think he only had 3 or 4 mares. And then after that, he was backed when he came to my stable when he was 3. And at that time, with the rider on, he didn't really move that well. He had the trot was a bit like up down because he had so much energy. And the canter was a bit scruffy too. But he always felt, he felt like the biggest Mercedes with ADB brakes and servo steering. And then you took it on video, and then you looked at the video and said, it can't be true because it doesn't look anything. The feeling is perfect.
So did you think then at those early days of his training, Kyra, that he was going to be a really top Grand Prix horse? Did you have a sense of that already?
Well, I always believed in him. He learned very quickly and was very keen to work together with you. And at that time, I had been riding at the Olympics with Piccolo, and I didn't really know what the super international dressage horse would be. I just knew what a Grand Prix horse is. And I felt that he was a Grand Prix horse. But as a young horse, you couldn't really say that how good he would become. And it wasn't really before he was 6 years old. Then he was always very riding in the forest, for instance. He never could walk home. He had so much energy, so he tried to do half steps, and then when you tried to stop him, then he did naturally Piaf. So Piaf was there when he was 4 years old. And because Piccolo had been quite lazy, I knew that this energy was something that I needed later on, so I was patting him, and I wasn't that concerned that he didn't walk, because the walk was okay then when he was relaxed, and I thought with the years then he will relax in that, and that he did do. And then he really learned to trot when over the just by mistake he did some passage steps when I was riding a little circle in the winter when between 5 and 6. And then after that he found that passage gear, and then that was like a fourth gate for him almost. So he was very much like, by mistake he learned something, and if you could praise him in the right moment, then he would never forget it.
So did you find that you had to adjust your riding to him? Did you learn things from him that helped you develop as a rider?
Well, I think you learn with all horses, and especially because this Piccolo, he wasn't like his conformation wasn't very good, and then he was a bit of a slower, lazier horse. So I knew that I needed a horse that had the energy. So I think if he would have been my first Grand Prix horse, then I would have been more annoyed that he wasn't relaxed or didn't walk or didn't win his first St. George. He actually was last in his first St. George without international St. George, and he still did like all the movements without mistakes, but he was just tense and the judges didn't like that. And so I already when he was 6, I said that this is going to be my medal horse, even if other people didn't believe it, but that was my feeling with him. And
you went to Falsterbo, of course, in your backyard with him, but after that, didn't you have the obviously the threat of losing him again? It wasn't always easy, was it? Because didn't Heikki decide to sell him after Falsterbo?
Yeah, I mean, he was 7 years old when I went to Falsterbo, and I had, my plan was to ride St. George I1 there, but then it turned out that they didn't have St. George I1, they only had Grand Prix and the Grand Prix Kyr. And then I thought, well, it's about as difficult to ride a St. George than it is to ride a Grand Prix, because Piaf Passage was quite easy for him. So then I decided I would start, and I did start, and he was second in the Grand Prix and won the Kyr. And then, because from the beginning, actually, this Heikki Soras, he had said that it was like a sales prospect, so I knew that. And then, then when he had won, then he got a bit nervous and said, now we have to sell him. And we had quite a few people coming, like good riders and good trainers coming to try him, but then they didn't, one said that the canter wasn't good enough, and one said that he should be castrated, and one said that the mouth wasn't very good, and so none of them bought him at the moment. And then after Falsterbo, this was before Falsterbo already, and then after Falsterbo I got my federation, or we got a contract on him to try for, I think, 3 months, to try to find a syndicate of owners who would go in and buy him, and that didn't go that well. And then the last day when, like on this contract, a friend of mine, and they were the owners of Kyra and Kartano, which was a big stud in Finland, but they were mainly doing jumpers, and they came, he came like to my stable. I knew him from before, and then he said, well, how is it going now with the syndicate? And I said, bad, and it's the last day, and there are people who wants to buy him, and so he is going to go. And then this Jarmo Karmavuo from Kyra, he said, well, we could be interested in buying him if it is so that the main part of him is not sold yet. He thought that it was only small shares left. And this was like 2:00 in the afternoon, and he said, I phoned my wife, and he phoned the wife, and the wife said yes, and they phoned the bank, and they said yes, and they phoned the federation, and they went up to the federation and signed the papers, and the horse was sold. So, and he stayed with me.
Oh, what a relief that must have been, because by now you were ready for the team. You made the team for the European Championships when Finland was able to send a team, wasn't it, in 87?
Yeah, well, that was the next year then.
Yeah.
But then it was already, we had done the deal, and so that was amazing that he could, or somehow that horse, even if I never owned him, he always somehow belonged to me.
Yeah, yes, obviously a terrific partnership. And And then, of course, your international career really kicked off with him. What were your fondest memories? I mean, I talked about the European Championships. There was the Olympic Games, of course, in Seoul. What are your fondest memories and the tests that you will be most proud of with him?
Well, I think still the World Championships in Stockholm, and that's not only because he got the medal there, but he after Seoul he was going well. He was also doing some stud duties, and then we were going to have the next year the European Championships. So I competed him in the spring, and then he went over to the stud to do some covering, and then he came back to me, and 2 days later he got colic, and that was the only time ever he had colic. But it went badly, and he had to be opened, and they did colic surgery, but unfortunately he got that hernia under the stomach, and it was pretty big, and that had all first to heal, and then we found one doctor in Sweden who said that he could try to operate the net into it so that it would keep the stomach line a bit better, and so that this was already then the autumn of that year, and the operation went fine, and then he came home, and he was very, very depressed after those operations, and I started riding him, and he was like, I thought that he wouldn't come back anymore. And then we had some school kids in the winter coming into the stable, and then I decided that I would, plat him and do a little display for these kids with him. And he came into the indoor school, and he saw the kids, and from that moment on he said, right, I'm going to come back to this because sewing is fine. And then he started to get much better from that moment. And so this is the winter before the World Championships. And then that he really came back, and that he, I think I did 2 or 3 competitions before the Worlds, and everybody around me, they said that, he's never going to come back. And I mean, there were rumors that he was dead or castrated or whatever, but I believed really that he would come back, and then that he did so well in Stockholm, and then the year after at the World Cup final. It was like, I think from when he got the colic, I really realized that you never own a horse for the rest of your life. You have to be happy for every day you can ride. So even if I had, of course, appreciated him before, I appreciated every day after that. So it was like a different feel, really.
And it certainly was a roller coaster for you, wasn't it, with him? As you said, with the colic surgery, the threat to his life, his career, and then he comes back in the Stockholm in 1990, and the World Cup, as you said, and then the European Championships 1991, and then you had to lose him again.
Yeah, but that was like, unfortunately, the farm got into economic problems, so I knew that I couldn't. It wasn't that they wanted to sell him; they had to sell him, and the farm went bankruptcy, and they lost the whole farm too. So it was hard, but those are the things. And I still, after the colic operation, I had so many good years with him too. So when he was sold to this Japanese rider, I then met him at a couple of shows, and we talked. I remember the first time I saw him in Vertogenbosch, and the Japanese rider, he said to me that, I have never been able to do 15 one-time changes with him, but I know that he can do it, so I don't get angry with him. And I said, well, good. And then the horse went into the Grand Prix, did the 2 times, and went into the diagonal and did 15 one-times with him. Then I started to cry, because I was so proud of him that he really took care of him. He knew what was coming, and even if he didn't quite understand the age, he still would do it. Mm-hmm. And then he was competing a couple of years, and then they retired him for stud. He was standing in Germany. I didn't have any contact with him at that point, but then he came back to Denmark, and then after a couple of years in Denmark, I managed to organize him back to his breeder. So he went to Möllerberg, who had bred him, and where his father was standing too. And so he was then 2 or 3 years, I think, there, still in stud. But they had to build him an own stable because he couldn't be in the same apart or like part of the stable where my Sharif was standing, because they were like fighting each other. So I did have like contact with him till the end, you can say.
Yes. And then, of course, he has a wonderful legacy. Did do some breedings, and I think you really liked his offspring as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I think somebody said to me, and I'm not 100% sure, but they say that 60% of his offspring in Finland have been doing at least St. George or more. Wow. Most of them are very like easy on the bit, and they learn like, or they have the ability to do Grand Prix. So if you can teach them the right way, they will learn it. And at the moment, I have one that is 10 years old that is born in Finland with Matador as father, and then Amiral, the other Grand Prix horse I had been at Fluing, as a mother's father. So he's doing everything for Grand Prix now. And then I have another one with Matador on the mother's side.
So what became of Matador then? Where was he laid to rest, Kyra? Did you know in the end?
Yeah, I did know, because then he started having like trouble getting up, and we tried with some, just massage and things like that, but it didn't really work out. So then we decided to put him to sleep. So he was put to sleep at home with Georg Möllerberg, and then he was buried in Denmark under a birch tree at the animal graveyard. So he has his plaque and is still remembered.
Well, you will never forget him. I know he was not only a very successful partner to you, and also a great friend. One of those horses that really marks your career, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, like, we together from a small country, we really showed to a lot of riders that it is possible to do it, even if you maybe don't have all the possibilities there from the beginning. If the horse is good enough and you are dedicated enough, then it is possible to do it internationally.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, certainly proved that. Kyra, thank you so much for taking us down memory lane and recalling your fun memories of Matador. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that is our show for you this holiday week in the US. I want to wish you all, if you're celebrating this American holiday of Thanksgiving, a very happy Thanksgiving. I hope you enjoy the turkey and all the trimmings. I certainly will be tucking into it. One of my favorite meals of the year. And of course, being an expat, I like to do turkey at Christmas as well. So hopefully I'll get 2 turkeys this year. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the show, and I hope that you'll come back next week. And of course, don't forget you can check out all our show notes at dressageradio.com, and all the links to the offers that we offer you here at the Horse Radio Network. And don't forget you can download those podcasts directly from iTunes and listen on your app, on your iPhone or your Android. And that's Instamat, that's one app, and of course the Whole Way Feeds app as well. And don't forget you can leave your comments, questions or suggestions on Facebook, on our fan page there, or you can send me an email directly to chris@horseradionetwork.com. I should mention, of course, the winter quiz series that we run here on the Dressage Radio Show. That I've already posted on the Facebook page to ask if any of you have any preferences as to who you would like me to have on the show and start that quiz series going again. Just post your suggestions there or send me an email. Well, that wraps it up for this week. I will be back, of course, same time, same place next week. So until then, thank you all for listening.